theater performance. Hypothesis or fact? Pearson's Dr. Absurdist speculative philosopher. Confused, deranged, eccentric, entangled in his own illogical mental constructs, dressed in overly elegant but mismatched clothing. Professor Fantasy Utopian Scientist, lost in arguments, with imperfect senses but confident in his ability to assess the world. He wears a futuristic but slightly damaged uniform. Dr. Vedantin, VedicScientist.com, respectful, yet penetrating, quoting the Vedas and confirming facts, dressed in simple, traditional, Indian clothing. Crowd representatives of the average person, initially fascinated by the babble, later gradually confused and ultimately enlightened. Narrator, a voice that guides through the action and emphasizes symbolism. Hypothesis or fact? Act 1. Echoes of empty promises. Additional description of people. Some details are not important. Dr. Absurd speculative philosopher. His outward appearance is extravagant, with hair sticking out in all directions and clothes made of various fabrics that were once fashionable, but are now a bizarre combination. His speech is rapid, full of wise sayings and Latin phrases that he constantly interrupts others and seems completely convinced of his genius, even though his theories are nonsensical. Professor Fantasy, Utopian Scientist, a tall, thin man with a shiny but slightly dirty white lab coat. He wears futuristic glasses connected to a small screen that constantly displays incomprehensible data. His speech is enthusiastic, full of scientific jargon and promises of technological solutions for everyone. He is extremely naive and believes in the absolute goodness of technology. Dr. Vedantin, Vedic Scientist. A calm, composed, middle-aged man in simple yet neat traditional Indian attire. His presence is coming. He speaks clearly, logically, and without any emotional charge. His strength lies in his silence and choice of words. Dr. Cynical Historian of Science. An elderly, haggard woman with a cynical smile. She wears old-fashioned glasses that hang down her nose. She constantly writes in a notebook and sighs. Occasionally, she believes that humanity is doomed to repeat the same mistakes. Mr. Optimist Fantasy's supporter. A youthful, energetic man with a constant smile. He is a huge fan of Professor Fantasy's and believes every word he says. He wears a t-shirt that says the future is bright. Miss Skeptic Reasonable Cities, a middle-aged woman who is initially interested but quickly becomes suspicious of everything she hears. She asks pointed questions and expresses doubts, but her opinion seems to be ignored at first. Technician, a assistant to Absurd, a young, nervous technician who tries to follow Absurdist instructions, but seems completely lost. He's constantly fixing microphones and switches that are not working properly. Technician B, Fantasia's assistant, A confident but superficial technician. He tries to look important and constantly checks on Professor Fantasy's super complex equipment, which is really just a regular computer with flashing lights. Cine, a large, futuristic lecture hall crowded with neon lights, holographic projections that are blurry and incomprehensible, and futuristic but non-functional equipment. In the middle of the stage is a large lectern. Behind the lectern is a large projection screen displaying abstract but seemingly complex diagrams. In the background, in a sort of VIP box, sit Dr. Cynic and Ms. Skeptic. At the edge of the stage are Technician A and Technician B, mostly occupied with themselves. Dr. Vedantin sits quietly in the front row, observing but not yet involved. The curtains open. Loud, pompous, opening music, abruptly interrupted by the sound of a microphone crackling. Dr. Absurdus appears on stage, pushing Tech A away from the microphone. Dr. Absurdus, loudly, with a theatrical gesture. Yes, my dear fellow travelers in the arena of cosmic reason, I welcome you to this monumental gathering where we will break the shackles of dogma and plunge into the endless oceans of the latest findings. Some applause from the crowd. Technician A hides behind the podium while he fixes his tie. Dr. Absurdus. I am Dr. Absurdus, researcher of what is not and creator of what could be. My latest theory, the quantum infinity principle of illusory reality, proves that our perception of the world is merely a holographic projection of our subconscious desires. And this projection is of course wrong, drastically incomplete, and waves his hands. Absurd! The crowd looks confused. Some try to nod. Mr. Optimist claps with both hands. Mr. Optimist, enthusiastically. Brilliant. This is it. Freedom. Ms. Skeptical. Quietly, Dr. Cynical. Holographic projection. I don't think my electric bill is holographic. Dr. Cynical laughs with a cynical cough. My dear, for some people everything is holographic until it hits them in the head. And even then they will say it's just a matrix glitch. Dr. Absurdus continues, not noticing the comments. Think about it. Have you ever thought that your pain is just a neural oscillation that can be reprogrammed? Or that your happiness is just a chemical cocktail that, with the right mental gymnastics, can be transformed into permanent bliss? It is the illusion of sensory perception that holds us in its grip, and my principle will set us free. Professor Fantasy makes his way onto the stage, pushing Dr. Absurd slightly aside. Technician B tries to stop him, but fails. Professor Fantasige, in an excited voice, almost shouting, No, no! Dear your theory is interesting, of course, but pauses. Impractical. We need tangible solutions. I am Professor Fantasy, utopian scientist, and my research laboratories are developing Project Eden 2.0. It is about global synchronization of brain waves using quantum resonators, which will eliminate all our problems. The crowd looks more enthusiastic. Mr. Optimist applauds even louder. Mr. Optimist, this is it. the solution! Technology will save us! Miss Skeptical! Dr. Cynical! Global brainwave sync sounds more like mind control. Dr. Cynical laughs. My dear, mind control is always presented as the solution. History repeats itself. Prof. Fantazij! Imagine a world without wars, without disease, without hunger. We will all think the same. We will all act as one. We will all be happy. And this will not be just an illusion, but a reality that we will create with the power of technology. My sensory augmentation device points to his futuristic glasses, allows me to see and hear beyond the limits of ordinary human perception. With it, I can correct the imperfect essences of each individual. Technician B quickly fixes Fantazij's glasses, which are making strange noises. Professor Fantazij screams, "This is evolution! In practice, we will be our own gods. We will no longer rely on archaic concepts of karma or reincarnation. These are just empty stories for controlling the mass. We will create our own destiny." The crowd applauds. Some are already on their feet. Fantazij bows. Dr. Vedantin, quiet but piercing, his voice audible over the noise. Everyone turns to him. He does not rise. Honorable speakers, I hear grand promises and ambitious projects. But let me ask a simple question. If our senses are imperfect, as has been said, how can we truly perceive absolute truth through augmented senses or holographic projections? Would that not only increase the illusion, rather than dispel it? There is silence. Dr. Absurdis and Professor Fantazij look at each other, looking surprised by Vedantin's intervention. Dr. Absurdus laughs nervously. Ah, Dr. Vedantin, always with these metaphysical questions. Our senses are, of course, imperfect, but we can intellectually transform them. That is the power of the mind, my friend. Prof. Fantazij waves his hand, and the power of technology. My device not only expands the senses, but also filters them. It removes distortions and displays pure reality. Believe me, I know. Dr. Vedantin, calmly, without raising his voice. If your senses, even with their extensions, are still part of the material world, can you really perceive something beyond the material with them, as it is written in the Vedic scriptures? The material senses are made of material energy, and therefore they cannot perceive spiritual reality. It is like trying to see the wind with your eyes or taste happiness with your tongue. Every tool has its limitation. Mr. Optimist looks at Miss Skeptic, who nods in agreement. Ms. Skeptical, that makes sense. How can I see anything more if my glasses are fogged up? Dr. Seneca, quietly, but with contempt. Always the same story. People believe in the solutions offered by those who promise them the most, no matter how absurd it is. Dr. Absurdus recollects himself, raises a finger in the air. But, Dr. Vedantin, we are not talking about mere senses. We are talking about consciousness. About being. Isn't being merely a random product of evolution, driven by chemistry and physics? That is why Darwin's theory is so important. It explains that we evolved from lower forms of life. Professor Fantazij. Exactly. And I can speed up this process. With genetic engineering, we can create a superhuman. A being who will have perfect senses and perfect intelligence. And of course, he will be immortal. There's a loud applause. A few people in the crowd start cheering enthusiastically. Dr. Vedantin, still calm, sir. The theory of evolution as presented has many loopholes that common sense cannot accept. How could something as complex as the human eye have come into being by chance? How did consciousness, which is so different from matter, evolve? And why, if man evolved from ape, are there still apes? If evolution were a mere chance process, would a new type of ape have appeared, and not the old one have disappeared? It is explained in the Vedic scriptures. Just as the incarnated being in this body moves from childhood to youth and then to old age, so at the moment of death he passes into another body. The wise are not perplexed by such a change. This is not a mere theory, but an observation that has been confirmed over thousands of years. Reincarnation is not merely a change of form, but the transition of the soul, which is eternal, from one body to another. The crowd is silent. Some people start looking at their hands, and some nervously adjust their clothes. Technician A, whispering to Technician B, "What if he's right? I heard grandfather talking about past lives." Technician B rolls his eyes. "Don't talk. Nonsense. It's all superstition. We are modern scientists." Doctor? Cynical? Quietly. Modern scientists with the same blind spots as everyone before them. Doctor! Absurdis. He pulls himself together again, his voice a little more forced. "But Dr. Vedantin, if we accept reincarnation, what about free will? Aren't we just puppets of fate then? And karma? That's just religious punishment." Professor Fantazij. Exact. My project, Eden 2.0, will eliminate all karmic debts. People will live without responsibility. Happy, without any restriction. Complete anarchy in order. The crowd now seems divided. Some applaud, others are confused. Skeptical. No accountability. That sounds like a recipe for chaos. Dr. Vedantin, looking at them with a calm, compassionate gaze. Free will and karma are not contradictory. Karma is not punishment, but the law of cause and effect that works regardless of our beliefs. It is like the law of gravity. We cannot deny it and expect it not to work. We have free will to choose our actions, but the consequences of those actions are inevitable. As explained in the Vedic book, all actions are actually performed through the three modes of material nature. But one who is deceived by the false ego thinks that he is the doer. This false ego, this pride that we are the creators of our own destiny without regard to higher laws, drives us into illusion. Absurdus and Fantasia begin to cross uneasily. Their faces are red. Dr. Absurdus, angry and arrogant. But if all this is true, then you think my theories are just a fabrication. Prof, Fantastic frightened, and my Project Eden 2.0, that's a utopian lie. Dr. Vedantine, gently. The truth is that the tendency to deceive and lie in the material world stems from our being covered in illusion. We want to believe in what is comfortable for us, what allows us to avoid responsibility. We want the world to be simple, that we have no duties. But the truth is often more complex and requires introspection. The crowd is completely silent. Some people look shocked, some nod, some are tears. Mr. Optimus, frightened. So, I'm not just a coincidence, and my actions have consequences. Ms. Skeptical, with a little satisfaction. I told you something wasn't right. Dr. Cynical nods. For the first time today I've heard something sensible. It's sad that it has to go to such an extreme for people to listen. Dr. Absurdus sits down on the floor, looking completely bewildered. Professor Fantasige takes off his glasses and holds them in his hand. Confused. Techs A and B hide behind the equipment. Dr. Vedantine. But that is precisely the point. There is a spark of knowledge within each of us that can transcend this illusion. The only question is whether we will feed it with truth or let it languish under a mountain of lies and false pride. Dr. Vedantine calmly sits back in his seat. There is silence on the stage. Dr. Absurdus stares into space. Professor Fantasige rubs his eyes with his hand. The crowd is in deep thought. The curtains slowly begin to close, while time seems to stand still on stage. The only sound is the soft whispering of the crowd waking from their dreams. End of the first act. Act 2. Reality, rebellion. Sin. The same futuristic lecturer. Some of the neon signs are flickering or are out, symbolizing the slow decay of the illusion. Some of the shiny but non-functional equipment has also fallen apart. The chaos of the previous act is still present on the stage. Dr. Absurdus sits on the floor before Technician A tries to get him to his feet. Professor Fantasige stands at the counter, still holding the paintbrush in his hand. Dr. Vedantine is still calm and in his place in the front row. The crowd is more divided than before. Some still applauding, others silent and bewildered. The curtains rise. Dr. Absurdus is seen on stage, trying to compose himself while Technician A is frantically tugging at his sleeve. Technician A, Dr. Absurdus, please stand up. We have to continue. You have another speech. Dr. Absurdus! Mumbles, confused. Speech? What speech? Isn't everything a paradox? Am I not myself? ... A holographic glitch. The crowd is confused. Some smile, thinking it's a joke. Professor Fantazij, he reacts quickly to resolve the situation and raises his voice. Dear colleagues, forgive us. His genius simply overwhelmed him. Such are great minds. But allow me to continue where we left off. We were talking about progress, about human domination over nature. The crowd applauds. Mr. Optimus stands up and cheers enthusiastically. Mr. Optimist! That's right! We are the masters. We are the rulers. Ms. Skeptical, Dr. Cynical, dominating nature usually ends up with nature dominating us. Dr. Cynical nods, and there's always someone who thinks they're the exception. Proud, Fantazij, glowing. My expanded senses allow me to see potential that the ordinary human eye cannot perceive. I see invisible energy flows that we can harness for unlimited energy, for food for all, for eternal youth. All this without karmic consequences. After all, we are the ones who write the new rules. The crowd applauds enthusiastically, some shouting free energy and eternal life. Professor Fantazij, even more excited. Imagine there will be no more disease, no more hagging. My nanobot technologies will repair every cell damage. We will simply reset the biological clock. This is the elimination of karma. We will no longer influence nature, but will subordinate nature to us. This is the pinnacle of evil. Darwin was only the beginning. We are the fulfillment. Loud applause. Some people in the crowd look at their wrinkles and smile. Dr. Vedantan, quietly but clearly, his voice drowning out the noise. Professor Fantazij stops mid-speech. Respected Professor, you mention invisible energy flows and nanobots for eternal youth. But wouldn't it make more sense to first understand who we are before trying to control such complex systems as life itself? Your false ego that you can solve spiritual problems only with material means blinds you. As it is written in the Vedic books, a person who is deceived by the false ego thinks that the material body is his own and that the things connected with the body are his. But in reality, neither the body nor the things connected with it are his. Fantasia's frowns. The crowd is confused. Professor Fantasy. Confused. But nanobots are real. And the progress of science has always been about pushing the limits of nature. Haven't we created vaccines that have saved millions of lives? Haven't we flown to the moon? Dr. Vedantan, calmly. Of course, material progress brings certain benefits. However, the solution to birth, old age, disease, and death is not merely on the material plane. Vaccines and space travel have not eliminated suffering on a deeper level. People still suffer from greed, anger, envy, fear. These problems arise from our being covered with the illusion that we are only this material body, and from our false pride that we are the masters of everything. Absyrtus gathers himself again, stands up, and stumbles towards the microphone. Technician tries to stop him, but fails. Dr. Absyrtus, gloriously, with a slightly washed-out look. But Dr. Vedantin. Suffering is merely a construct of the mind. It can be reprogrammed. My new theory principle of quantum pain negation proves that pain is merely an illusory feedback loop in the nervous system. If we ignore it, it disappears. This is liberation from karma. This is freedom. The crowd applauds. Some close their eyes and try to deny the pain. Mr. Optimist. That's right. If you don't feel it, it doesn't exist. Miss Skeptical. Dr. Cynical. Try telling that to someone with a broken leg. Dr. Cynical. Holds back laughter. Or so I do after 10 hours of listening to this madness. Dr. Vedantin. Not to be confused. Sir, you are trying to escape from reality instead of accepting it. Denying pain does not mean that it does not exist. It is like having a fever and saying that it is not a disease because you cannot think of a virus. Karma is not only the result of actions, but also the result of the motivation for actions. If we act with false ego and desire for exploitation, it will come back to us. It is said in the old books, he who does not realize that the body is only an instrument, and that he himself is the spirit soul, and who thinks that he is the doer, although the actions are performed by the natural elements, is not a true understander. This is the ignorance that holds us in a grip, and from this ignorance are born all your utopian ideas with which you try to mislead the masses into ignoring the responsibility for their actions. The crowd now looks much more confused. Some stop clapping. Mr. Optimist looks worried. Prof. Fantasig responds quickly, in a slightly panicked voice. But, Dr. Vedantin, if we accept karma, then there is no freedom. Then we are all prisoners of the past. And then what about progress? Should we stop and simply meditate? Dr. Vedantin, patiently. Freedom is not in ignoring the consequences of one's actions, but in knowing one's true nature and acting in accordance with it. The living being is the soul covered with material bodies through reincarnation. True freedom is liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Progress is not only material, but also spiritual. And meditation, true meditation, is a process of knowing oneself, not just passive sitting. The tendency to cheat and lie is manifested in trying to circumvent the laws of nature instead of understanding them. Dr. Absurdus begins to spin in circles as if trying to catch his own tail. Dr. Absurdus, a whirlwind. A whirlwind of paradoxes. But if I'm not the perpetrator, 10. Who? Who am I really? Dr. Vedantin. His voice becomes stronger, though still calm. You are not this body. You are not this mind. You are the spirit soul Atma, a part of the supreme soul Paramatma, as described in the Vedic book. For the soul there is never birth or death. It has never come into being, nor will it come into being. It is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and original. It does not die when the body dies. Your true nature is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. This is the truth that you are trying to ignore, so that you can live in illusion and do foolish things. Exploit, manipulate. The crowd is now completely silent. Some people seem deep in thought. Mr. Optimus sits in a chair, his face in his hands. Ms. Skeptical, quietly. This is something I've been thinking about for a long time. Dr. Cynical nods, with a hint of respect in his voice finally. Someone who talks about what really matters. Prof. Fantazij, frightened. But if that's the case, then all my patents, all my research, are meaningless. Dr. Vedantan, calmly. No, they are not meaningless if you direct them to the right purpose. Material knowledge can be useful if we use it to understand the truth, not to avoid it. It is not a matter of giving up everything, but of understanding the meaning of life and acting in harmony with it. Science can help improve material existence, but it cannot solve spiritual problems. But when you know spiritual truth, even the material world is put into perspective. Absurdus stops spinning, looks at Dr. Vedantan with his mouth open. There is a kind of silence in him that is not confusion, but emptiness. Dr. Absurdus, emptiness. My theory of infinite emptiness is that it not emptiness, but fullness. Dr. Vedantan nods. Yes, fullness of consciousness. Fullness of being. Emptiness is just an illusion that arises when we stray from our true nature. Technician A holds his head. Technician B checks his super complex equipment, which is now making no sound. Technician B. It's not working anymore. It's completely silent. Cynical, with a smile. Maybe that's a good thing. When the noise stops, we can hear. The crowd begins to awaken. Some exchange glances. Others talk in silence. It seems that something has just occurred to them. Perhaps some are beginning to understand that envy has been preventing them from accepting the truth. Dr. Vedantan sits back in his seat and observes the reactions. His work is done. Now it is up to them to accept or reject the truth. The curtains slowly close. As they descend, there is a quiet murmur and contemplation from the crowd, no longer applause. There is an energy of awakening. End of the second act. Act 3! The last sigh of illusion. The lecture hall is now in a state that reflects an internal conflict. Half the neon lights have gone out. The projector only shows pale, flickering shadow. The equipment is partly broken. Cables are strewn across the floor. Nevertheless, Dr. Absurdus and Professor Fantazij seem full of energy again, as if clinging to the last remnants of their pride. Dr. Vedantan is still calm and observant. The crowd is now visibly divided. Some listen with enthusiasm to Absurdus and Fantazij, while others are skeptical, and some even openly express doubt. The curtains rise. Dr. Absurdus stands in the middle of the stage, a look of self-importance on his face. His hair is even more disheveled, but there is a fanatical gleam in his eyes. Technician A hides in a corner, covering his ears. Dr. Absurdus loudly, with dramatic gestures. My dears, you have heard the primitive explanations. the empty accusations of karma and reincarnation. But I tell you, these are merely phantom echoes of the distant past. We, the enlightened minds of the 21st century, have the data. We have empirical evidence. And we have theories that go beyond mere observation by the imperfect senses. Some applause from the crowd. Mr. Optimist raises his head again and applauds. Dr. Absurdus, my latest research, published in the Journal Annals of Unreflective Consciousness, reveals that the so-called soul is just a complex algorithm running in our brains. We have proven that consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of neural networks. When we die, this algorithm simply turns off. There is no soul. There is no reincarnation. And of course, there is no karma. These are just empty threats invented by primitive societies to control the mind. Why else would a person who does good deeds suffer while a villain enjoys? This is proof that karma does not exist. This is proof that we are free. The crowd applauds, some looking relieved. Miss Skeptic frowns. Miss Skeptical. So if there's no karma, why even bother being good? Dr. Cynico! With a bitter smile. That's the question people ask over and over again when you offer them this kind of freedom. And the answer is always the same. Because it's easier. Dr. Absurd, glowing. Exactly. Dear lady, let's be pragmatic. Let's do what suits us. Let's live this life by our own rules. The meaning of life is in enjoyment, in accumulation, in personal improvement, regardless of the consequences. Sadness and pain are just chemical imbalances. My new therapy, paradoxical emotion inversion, allows you to simply turn any negative emotion into a positive one. And it's scientifically proven. Loud applause. Some people in the crowd rub their hands as if trying to numb the pain. Narrator! The false ego feeds on easy promises and offers a way out of all responsibility. But the price of this freedom is high. The denial of one's own true nature. Professor Fantasige quickly approaches the microphone. Can't wait for his turn. Prof. Fantasige in a high, enthusiastic voice. Dear Absurdus, your theory of the algorithmic soul is fascinating. But we need tangible evidence. We need technological solutions. My colleagues and I have made a breakthrough in quantum bioengineering in recent months. We have discovered a longevity gene that we can activate in all humans. This is a crucial step towards immortality. Loud applause, enthusiastic shouts of immortality. Prof. Fantasige, imagine! There will be no more old age, no more disease. People will live for thousands of years, maybe even indefinitely. This is real. No longer Darwin's slow, random improvement, but planned, engineered creation. And since we will not die, there will be no reincarnation either. And of course, there'll be no karma either. We will no longer operate according to natural laws, but according to scientific laws that we will write ourselves. The crowd is in ecstasy. Some hug their neighbors, some wipe away tears of happiness. Prof. Fantasisch. My research has shown that the human mind is extremely flexible. Using advanced neural interfaces, we will be able to connect all minds into one collective consciousness. No individual differences, no conflicts, only harmony, only pure efficiency. And of course, complete synchronization of the senses so that we will all perceive the same reality without distortions and delusions. This is the end of ignorance. This is the end of greed, anger, and envy. This is a complete utopia. Mr. Optimus climbs onto a chair and claps wildly. Technician Bioso claps and jumps. Some of the previously skeptical people also look hesitant. Miss Skeptical. To Dr. Cynic. Complete mind sync. Isn't that ... the end of individuality. Dr. Cynica sighs. For some, it's the solution to all problems. For others, it's their worst nightmare. History is full of attempts to achieve such harmony, and it never ends well. Narrator. The lofty promises of immortality and perfect harmony are merely a veil, covering a deep fear of one's own transience and responsibility. Dr. Vedantin slowly stands up. He is in no hurry. His face is calm, but there is deep wisdom in his eyes. His presence silences the crowd again. Absurdus and Fantasius calm down, but they look angry and stubborn. Dr. Vedantin, in a resonant but non-aggressive voice. Respected sir, I hear your scientific findings and promises of immortality and collective consciousness. But let me ask again! Are your senses, which you wish to improve and synchronize, really capable of perceiving that which is beyond the material? Dr. Absurdus, you say that the soul is an algorithm, but what algorithm can explain love, compassion, sacrifice? What algorithm can explain self-awareness, which is so different from a simple chemical reaction? Absurd opens his mouth, but cannot utter a word. Fantasia stutters. Dr. Vedantin, you claim that there is no karma because the good suffer and the bad enjoy. This is a superficial observation that does not take into account the entire cycle of reincarnation. As explained in the Vedas, one should understand what is action, what is non-action, and what is forbidden action. The path of action is very complex. Karma is not just one life, but it is a complex network of cause and effect spread over many lives. A person who enjoys this life may be reaping the fruits of good deeds in the past, while by his present bad deeds, he is accumulating bad karma for the future. And one who suffers may be paying off old debts. This is perfectly logical and acceptable if we look at the bigger picture. You cannot deny the law just because you do not see all its parts. The crowd is now quiet, some looking stunned. Mr. Optimus glanced anxiously at Miss Skeptica. Professor Fantazich! Angry! This is just religion. We are talking about science. We are talking about genetics. We will create immortality. Dr. Vedantin, calmly. The immortality of the body is an illusion. It is like trying to repair a garment that is worn out and can no longer be repaired. The body is like a garment for the soul. When it is useless, the soul throws it away and puts on a new one. What gene can prevent the natural wear and tear and entropy that apply to the entire material world. Even your longevity gene is subject to this law. Everything material eventually destroys itself. This is a universal law that you cannot overwrite with knowledge. And what is the value of life if there is no knowledge, if it is just endless repetition? Professor Fantasius looks shocked. Absurdus begins to rock back and forth. Dr. Vedantin. And as for your collective consciousness and synchronization of senses, that is dangerous. It is a tendency to deceive and lie, to try to hide your individual responsibility. If everyone is the same, then there is no one to be responsible. The end of individuality is the end of free will. Isn't your desire for perfect harmony just a fear of choice and consequences? You say that this is the end of ignorance, but this is only the deepest form of ignorance, because you deny the very essence of life, that we are individuals who have freedom of choice and responsibility for our actions. Greed, anger, and envy do not disappear because the brain is synchronized, but because the individual rises above these material qualities by knowing himself. The crowd is now completely divided. Some look completely terrified, others look enlightened. Mr. Optimist now looks at Professor Fantasy with a kind of disappointment. Dr. Absurdus, weakly. So, my theories, my therapy, are merely a seduction, and my understanding of the world is merely a delusion. Dr. Vedantin, compassionately, your theories are an expression of false pride, which believes that man can create his own reality without regard to higher laws. They are delusions because they are based on imperfect senses and erroneous assumptions. You are trying to avoid the facts of life and truth instead of accepting them. It is an illusion that we can be happy even if we ignore our own spiritual nature. Professor Fantasius sits down on the floor. His futuristic glasses have fallen off his nose. Prof. Fantasic, my immortality, my collective consciousness, all of this is just a dream. Dr. Vedantin looks at him. You can wake up from your dream if you choose to. True knowledge is not in manipulating the material world, but in understanding and accepting spiritual reality. True happiness is in rising above material. The crowd begins to move. Some people rise and approach Dr. Vedantin. Among them are Miss Skeptic and Dr. Cynical. Miss Skeptical, in a voice full of hope. So, ye steady open. Is there a path that is not just an illusion? Dr. Vedantin. Always. The path is in self-realization. In the realization that you are not just this body, but a spiritual soul. And that you have an eternal connection with the supreme truth. This is the path that leads to true happiness and peace, which no material scientific findings can achieve. Dr. Absurdus and Professor Fantasic look completely defeated. They sit on the floor in the embrace of their own ignorance and delusions. Technician A tries to avoid them. Technician B picks up the broken equipment. Narrator, as empty promises and utopian dreams subside, the path to true understanding open. The light of wisdom, which was obscured by false pride, now shines brighter, and those who were previously blinded begin to see. It is not easy to accept the truth when one clings to comfortable lies, but when the door of knowledge opens, everything changes. The curtains slowly close. The crowd is now gathered around Dr. Vedantin, some asking him questions, others just listening to him with deep respect. Absurdis and Fantasius are still on the ground, alone, in their delusion. End of the third act. Act 4. The rebellion of reality and new illusions. Persons. Dr. Absurdus, speculative philosopher. Still confused, but trying to pull himself together again. His hair is even more disheveled, his clothes strewn about. Professor Fantasy! Utopian scientist! A little more scared now, but still stubbornly defending his ideas. Dr. Vedantin, VedicScientist.com, collected with authority that comes from knowledge. Dr. Genial, molecular biologist. He's eloquent, confident, wears glasses that constantly fall on his nose, and believes in the absolute power of genetics and chance. Professor Nihil, cosmologist, always looking into the distance with an expression of weariness. He believes in the meaninglessness of existence after death. He speaks in a deep, melancholic voice. Dr. Materia, neuroscientist, determined, precise, equipped with a laser pointer that she constantly uses. She tries to explain everything solely in terms of material processes in the brain. Dr. Cynical, historian of science, even more cynical, but with a little hope in his eyes. Mr. Optimus Fantasy supporter, visibly hesitant, no longer knows who to trust. Miss Skeptic, reasonable citizen, increasingly convinced of Dr. Technician, a assistant to observe, even more nervous. Technishambi, assistant fantasy, still trying to fix the incomprehensible equipment. Crowd, initially divided, later increasingly awakened. The lecture hall is now even more in disarray. Several chairs are overturned. The projection screen shows a distorted, almost unrecognizable image. The atmosphere is tense, but there is also a sense of anticipation in the air. Absurdis and Fantasige have stood up. Again, their postures tense. The curtains rise. Dr. Absurdus stands in front of the microphone, holding some kind of rolled-up paper. Dr. Absurdus, shining with a note of despair in his voice. My dear enlightened seekers of truth, the previous attack on our enlightened ideas was only a short-lived disturbance in our cosmic reflection. I spoke of the algorithmic soul, of the illusion of karma. Now listen to the burdens of our young geniuses who have come to support my thesis. Dr. Genial, Professor Nihil, and Dr. Materia enter the stage. They look confident, almost arrogant. Dr. Genial immediately takes the microphone, pushes Absurdus away. Thank you, Dr. Absurdus, for this introductory paradox. I am Dr. Genial, a molecular biologist, and my team has made a breakthrough. Our research in the field of evolutionary genetics has proven unequivocally that man is nothing more than a highly evolved ape. We have found shared genetic markers with our primates, proving our common origin. This is scientific fact, sir. No more spiritual nonsense. We are merely the product of random mutations and natural selection. Some applause from the crowd, especially from those who want to believe in simplicity. Mr. Optimist claps enthusiastically. That's right. We are monkeys. It's that simple. Miss Skeptical rolls her eyes. So we're from a monkey and we're still doing stupid things. That seems like a step backwards to me. Dr. Sinica shrugs. Excellent. Now we're officially denying everything that makes us human. Professor Nihil, with a rough, melancholy voice, he pushes Genial aside. If you allow me, Dr. Genial, an addition to your excellent conclusion. I am Professor Nihil, a cosmologist, and my conclusions about the ultimate fate of the universe are even more liberating. The universe is expanding, and will eventually cool into an eternal void. Everything will disintegrate. Stars will go out, galaxies will expand, everything will end. So, if after life everything ends, and if it doesn't matter whether we were good or bad in a cosmic sense, then why bother with empty concepts like karma or real? These are just fictions of the past to keep us in fear. Let's live this one only life while we have it and enjoy it. Some more applause. Some people look relieved. Some look terrified at this hopeless picture. Narrator. When the fear of responsibility overwhelms the mind, even more seductive lies emerge. The false ego clings to any claim that allows it to evade the truth. Dr. Mattia. He steps decisively to the microphone, points his index finger at the audience. And now, Dr. Materia, a neuroscientist, can support the thesis of both colleagues with unsurpassed evidence from the human brain. Our latest studies using higher resolution fMRI scans have shown that all our feelings, our thoughts, our consciousness are simply the product of electrochemical impulses in neurons. When these impulses cease, we go out like a light, nothing more, nothing less. Everything you think you are is just a complex biological computer. So, Dr. Vedantin, what kind of soul? What kind of reincarnation? These are just empty fairy tales. And what about karma? If our actions are simply a reaction to chemical processes, then we are not responsible. The crowd is now completely divided. Some may applaud, some are silent, some are horrified. Absurdities and fantasia exchanged satisfied. Glances Mr. Optimist weakly. So, if I'm a computer, can I just reboot? Miss Skeptic, Mr. Optimist. No, Mr. Optimist. It means you're just a pile of flesh and bones that will decay over time. Dr. Sinica sighs. The three horsemen of the apocalypse of reason. Dr. Vedantin slowly stands up. His calm demeanor and clear gaze immediately cut through the tense atmosphere. The three new scientists calm down, but their faces are full of contempt and stubbornness. Dr. Vedantin, in a calm but penetrating voice that echoes throughout the hall. Respected sirs, I hear your modern findings and convincing presentation, but allow me to respond to your claims, which are merely an expression of profound ignorance and a tendency to deceive and lie to avoid responsibility. Dr. Genial. You said... But have you ever thought about the missing links in this theory? Why aren't there millions of transitional forms between apes and humans? If species evolved by chance, there should be evidence of these transitions everywhere. And how do you explain the intelligence, consciousness, and moral conscience that are so pronounced in humans compared to animals? Genes can influence physical characteristics, but can they explain our spiritual nature? A living being is not just mutt. A living being is a spiritual soul, Atama, residing in the body. Dr. Genial looks irritated, tries to say something, but Dr. Vedantin doesn't interrupt him. Dr. Vedantin, Professor Nihil, you are talking about emptiness and the end of everything. This is an illusion arising from imperfect senses and limited understanding of time. The Vedas explain that the material world is cyclical. There is cosmic creation and destruction, but the soul is eternal, as it is written in the Vedas. Those who see the truth have realized that for the unreal existence of material body, there is no existence. And for the eternal soul, there is never continuity. Your claim that after life everything is over is just a fear of the unknown, which you are trying to rationalize with your science. The universe may be expanding, but that does not mean that the soul is disappearing. Can't you see the grandeur and complexity that we have around us? Is all this just a coincidence that will end in emptiness? This is not common sense. This is just a desire to deny responsibility. Professor Nihil is now completely pale. His pride is shattered. Dr. Vedantin and Dr. Materia, you claim that consciousness is merely a product of chemical impulses. If that is the case, then how do you explain that man can transcend his material impulses and act on moral principles? How do you explain free will if we are merely biological computers? If everything is merely a chemical reaction, then why is there a desire to seek truth? Why is there love at all? The imperfect senses can only show us the external manifestation, but not the cause. As explained in the Vedas, as fire burns in wood, so the soul manifests in the body. Fire is independent of wood, so the soul is independent of the body. It is envy that prevents you from accepting these simple truths. The crowd is now completely silent. Some look stunned, others nod in understanding. Mr. Optimist is not completely pale and hiding behind Miss Skeptic. Dr. Materia stutters. But that's impossible. Our instruments. Dr. Vedantin, your instruments are material, and they can perceive only material phenomena. Trying to grasp spiritual reality with material instruments is like trying to measure sound with a tape measure. False pride forces you to believe that your science is the only truth. But the truth is broader. Dr. Absurdis and Professor Fantasium look completely broken. The three new scientists look defeated. One of them, Dr. Genial, clutches his head. Dr. Genial mumbles, Genial. But what about the point? Professor Nihil sighs. So, it's not all over. Dr. Materia, weakly, What about then responsibility? Dr. Vedantin, in a ringing voice. Yes, there is responsibility. Responsibility for our actions, for our thoughts, for our words, because we are not just random chemical reactions, but eternal, spiritual souls who are part of the supreme truth. And it is this ignoring of karma, reincarnation, and responsibility in life that drives us to stupidity, exploitation, manipulation, and keeping people in ignorance. The false ego serves you many utopian ideas of how to escape the truth and how things in the world should work, just to escape the fact. But the truth is always clear. The crowd is now almost entirely turned towards Dr. Vedantin. Some people are wiping away tears. Some look as if they have awakened from a long sleep. A few individuals in the crowd applaud, but this time it is a different kind of applause. An applause of understanding and relief. Dr. Sinikal, with a small smile. It's like seeing the sunrise again. Miss Skeptic, glowing. Thank you. Finally, someone who tells the truth. Absurdis, Fantasia, and the three new scientists are now completely defeated. They sit on the floor, all in the grip of their own delusions. Their faces are blank narrator. When we face the truth and give up false pride, the path to understanding opens. The Vedic scientist, in his calmness and wisdom, defeated the lost attempts at deception, for truth is stronger than all lies. The curtains slowly close. The crowd is now gathered around Dr. Vedantin, all grateful to him. Some touch him, others ask him questions. Only the defeated scientists remain on stage, lost in their ignorance. End of the fourth act. Act 5, The Triumph of Truth. Persons. Dr. Absurdis, speculative philosopher. Confused, broken, lost in his own thought, but still occasionally tries to utter nonsensical claims. Professor Fantasy, utopian scientist, scared and disappointed. His self-confidence has completely disappeared. Dr. Vedantin, VedicScientist.com, compassionate yet unwavering in his presentation of truth. His voice now carries even more authority. Dr. Genial, molecular biologist. He sits on the floor, clearly shocked. Professor Nihil, cosmologist. He seems to have accepted his defeat. There is bitterness in his eye. Dr. Materia, neuroscientist. She's still trying to find a logical explanation, but she's failing. Dr. Cynical, historian of science, now completely on Dr. Vedantin's side, with a look that says, I told you so. Mr. Optimist, fantasy supporter. Surprised, confused, looking for answers. Miss Skeptic, reasonable citizen. Her previous skepticism has transformed into a search for truth. Technicien, assistant to the absurd, completely bewildered. He watches the action with his mouth open. Technician B, assistant fantasy, still trying to fix his broken equipment. Crowd, mostly calm, attentive, with clear understanding. Only a handful are still confused. Scene. The lecture hall is dark, except for a single beam of light falling on the lectern. All the futuristic lights are off. The equipment is broken and scattered. Papers and broken objects lie on the floor. Dr. Absurus, Prof. Fantazic, Dr. Genia, Professor Nihil, and Dr. Materia sit or lie on the floor in various stages of defeat. Dr. Vedantin stands behind the lectern, calm and collected. The crowd is in a deeper silence than ever. The curtains rise. The silence is almost palpable. Dr. Vedantin stands behind the lectern. The bewildered scientists are scattered across the stage. Dr. Vedantin. His voice is strong but soothing, echoing through the hall. In the past few hours we have heard many modern scientific findings. We have heard about algorithmic souls, about evolution from apes, about the meaninglessness of the universe, and about consciousness being just a chemical reaction. All of these claims were presented with learned words, with a juggling of terms, with the belief that one can convince the masses with sound and appearance alone. He looks at the defeated scientists, then at the crowd. Dr. Vedantin, but what happens when we put these learnings side by side with reality? What happens when we confront them with common sense and the complete logical unacceptability of their premises? We realize that these are merely utopian ideas created by the false ego to escape the facts of life and truth. Dr. Obsedis grimaces and tries to say something incomprehensible, but only coughs. Professor Fantagius stares at the ground. Dr. Vedantin, you have spoken of the imperfect senses of perception in this material world. And you are right. Our senses, these windows into the world, are limited. They see only a part of reality, not the whole. Tere! Fore! Trying to understand spiritual reality only with material instruments or theories based on these limited perceptions is like trying to catch the wind in a net. What is the point of searching for the gene for longevity if we do not understand that the soul is eternal, independent of the body? What is the point of explaining consciousness only through chemistry if we do not understand that the living being is covered with illusion, and that consciousness is primary, not a product of matter? Dr. Genial clutches his head as if all his beliefs have now finally dispelled. Dr. Vedantin, you have argued that Darwin's theory is definitive, and that we are descended from apes. But have you ever seen an ape writing poetry, contemplating its existence, or questioning the meaning of life? No! This is because an animal does not have the developed consciousness that a human has. The human form is unique and allows for self-realization. And as for reincarnation, anyone who is open to observation can see that everything in nature moves in cycles. So why should life be an exception? The tendency to cheat and lie forces you to deny this simple logic just to avoid responsibility. Professor Nihil raises his head, his eyes now a mixture of anger and despair. Professor Nihil, but if that's the case, then we are merely subordinate. We are not free. Dr. Vedantin, calmly but penetratingly, we are not subordinate, but connected. Freedom is not in ignoring universal laws, but in understanding them and acting in harmony with them. Freedom is not in ignoring karma, but in understanding how it works and in consciously acting to create positive consequences. Your desires to exploit and manipulate others, arising from ignorance, lead you into a false sense of freedom. It is like telling a car going the wrong way that you're free because you're driving your own way. But the ultimate destination is destruction. Dr. Materia, who has been sitting motionless until now slowly nods. Dr. Materia. So, our brains are just receivers, not create. Dr. Vedantin, approaching exactly. They're like complex computers that process information. But who is the programmer? Who is the one who uses them? It is the soul person inside. And when the soul is covered with illusion, it identifies with the body and the mind. That is when false pride arises, which forces us to believe in all these utopian ideas, just so that we can do stupid things, exploit and manipulate, and keep people in ignorance. The crowd is completely silent. Some have tears in their eyes. Mr. Optimist has risen and is standing next to Ms. Skeptic. Ms. Skeptic, raising her voice. Thank you. Finally, everything is clear. Dr. Cynical, with a small but sincere smile. History has stopped repeating itself, at least for today. Dr. Rupsardis tries to get up, but collapses back to the ground. His face is completely white. Doctor, absurd. Paradox. Everything is real. Dr. Vedantin. His voice softens. There is compassion in it. Yes, Dr. Absurdus, it is true. And this very realization is the first step to true freedom and happiness. Your desire to understand was sincere, but it was overshadowed by a false ego and envy that prevented you from accepting the truth. But a person understands only if he wants to understand. The crowd begins to move. A few people approach Dr. Vedantin, some who were previously most excited about absurdis and fantasy, now look most shaken. Professor Nihil slowly rises and walks over to Dr. Vedantin. Professor Nihil, with a voice full of remorse. What now? What should we do, who have lived for so long in this illusion? Dr. Vedantin looks at him with sincere compassion. The first step is recognition. The second is sincere inquiry. All this knowledge you have acquired can now be used for good, to serve the truth, to help others understand. They are not a hopeless case, although it may seem so. An elegant argument has been made. Now it is up to you to accept it. Dr. Matea approaches and stands next to Professor Nihil. Dr. Genial follows her with his eyes. Dr. Matea, can we start over? Dr. Vedantin, Smile's life offers countless opportunities to start over. That is the lesson of reincarnation. Every moment is a new opportunity for learning and growth. Dr. Vedantin and 3 former modern scientists are now gathered on stage, asking him questions. Absurdis and Fantasius are still on the floor. But now Mr. Optimist and Ms. Skeptic are gently trying to lift them up and talk to them. Technicians A and B have hidden in a corner, silently observing. It seems that the seed of truth has been planted. Narrator. And so ended the scientific symposium. A symposium that revealed the depths of human ignorance and the power of illusion. But in the end, the truth, simple and clear, triumphed, shattering false prides and opening the way to understanding. For As it has been said, a man understands only if he wants to understand. And sometimes just one voice speaking the truth is enough to awaken the sleeper. The curtains slowly and solemnly close. There is a soft murmur and some crying. But the atmosphere is now full of hope and inner peace. Act 6. The dawn of knowledge and the persistence of illusion. Persons, Dr. Absurdus, speculative philosopher, confused, on the verge of understanding, but still struggling with his own mental constructs. However, we notice a slight shift in his attitude. Professor Fantasi, utopian scientist, stubborn. With each defeat, he becomes more desperate to defend his ideas, which are now quite utopian and meaningless. His previous self-confidence is replaced by despair. Dr. Vedantin, VedicScientist.com. Compassionate, yet unwavering in his presentation of truth. His authority is now widely recognized. Dr. Genial, molecular biologist, deeply shaken, he begins to open his mind to new insights. Professor Nihil, cosmologist, open to reflection, but still struggles with his previous beliefs. Dr. Matiran, neuroscientist, intelligent and thoughtful, she slowly but surely grasps the logic of Vedantin's arguments. Dr. Cynical, historian of science, with now open respect for Dr. Vedantin. Mr. Optimist, former Fantasia supporter, confusion has been replaced by curiosity. He asks questions. Miss Skeptic, reasonable citizen, she has become a sincere seeker of truth. Technician A, assistant to the absurd. Completely bewildered, now more of a passive observer. Technician B, assistant fantasy. He's still frantically trying to fix his equipment, as if it's the last thing he has left. Crowd, mostly calm, attentive, with clear understanding. Only a handful are still confused and clinging to old ideas. Scene. The lecture hall is still in disarray, but the dust seems to have settled a little. The beam of light on the lectern is now stronger. Broken objects are still on the floor, but now they act as props of a past delusion. Dr. Vedantin stands behind the counter. Dr. Genial, Professor Nihil, and Dr. Matira have approached the counter, now more alert and open. Dr. Absurdus and Professor Fantasium are still on the floor. Fantosium has huddled in a corner, and Absurdis is slowly, confusedly rising. The crowd is expectant. The curtains rise. Dr. Vedantin is on stage, with Dr. Genial, Professor Nihil, and Dr. Mattia standing next to him, listening attentively. Dr. Vedantin, in a calm voice that permeates the hall. We have seen how false ego and a tendency to deceive and lie lead to complex but empty theories. How imperfect senses lead to erroneous conclusions when we try to understand the whole. And yet, there is a spark of knowledge within each of us that can be awakened. Dr. Genial moves forward, his face paled, but in his eyes there is a spark of understanding. Closing parenthesis, Dr. Genial. Dr. Vedantin, your arguments about missing links in evolution and about consciousness beyond mere genes are truly disturbing. I have believed in chance all my life, in blind nature, but when I think about the complexity of the cell, this perfectly synchronized mechanism, How can it be just a random mutation? It is almost impossible. I admit that your explanation of the soul as an independent entity has made me think. A few people in the crowd nod silently. Mr. Optimist moves closer to the stage. Noeter. When the mind opens, new paths are revealed to it. Admitting ignorance is the first step to true knowledge. Professor Nihil, in a thoughtful voice, and your explanation of the cyclicity of the universe. Dr. Vedantin, I have always relied on entropy and the ultimate mortality of everything. My theory of the meaninglessness of existence was based on this. But if the soul is eternal, and if the material world is merely a phase in an eternal cycle, then my cosmological predictions cannot be perfect. I confess that I was afraid of the responsibility that would come with the realization of meaning. Dr. Cynical nods with satisfaction. Doctor! Materia, in a firm voice. But without the previous arrogance, and your explanation that the brain is only a receiver of consciousness, not a creative, Dr. Vedantin, that is something my instruments cannot measure. But when I try to understand why humans are capable of love, compassion, sacrifice, emotions that go beyond mere chemical reactions, then your explanation makes sense. My previous claim that everything is purely material was just my desire to control and explain everything in terms of matter alone. Ignorance drove me to this false interpretation. The crowd is now mostly on Dr. Vedantin's side. Some are talking, others sharing impressions. Professor Fantasius is still in the corner, his hands covered over his ears. Dr. Absurdus has somehow risen to his feet, but he's wobbling. Dr. Absurdus, mumbling weakly. Algorithm, or harmony, paradox, or truth? Dr. Vedantin, to the desperate scientists. You see, respect its colleagues. The truth is simple. It does not need complicated words or juggling with terms to be convincing. When the mind is honest and open, it recognizes it. Karma, reincarnation, responsibility. These are not punishments, but natural laws that allow us to grow and develop. Professor Fantasy suddenly rises from the corner, his face distorted with despair and anger. Technician B tries to hold him back, but pushes him away. Prof. Fantasy screaming, his voice hoarse. No, no! This is all superstition! This is all regression! My utopia! My Project Eden 2.0. Immortality! Collective consciousness! We will create a perfect world! No pain, no suffering, no karmic debts! Science will save us! My quantum bioengineering is proof! I will show you that it is possible. Fantasius tries to make his way to the broken equipment as if to prove something. Technician B tries to stop him, but Fantasius is too strong in his delusion. Finally, he manages to get to the few wires and buttons that are still left and tries to connect them. His fingers are shaking. Professor Fantasy mumbles, voice broken. He won't defeat me! My technology! My vision! The people need this! They need a lie that will give them hope, not this burden of responsibility. The crowd is silent. Some are shocked by Fantase's despair. Technician behind the table! Dr. Vidantin, in a sad tone, but without condemnation. Professor, this is an illusion. Fear of responsibility, fear of transience, forces you to create utopian ideas that have no basis in reality. False pride prevents you from accepting the facts. True happiness does not lie in avoiding challenges, but in facing them with knowledge and understanding. Professor! Fantasige completes a connection. A short beep is heard, then the shattered equipment finally breaks, and smoke billows out of it. Fantasige lets out the hissing wires and collapses to the floor, sobbing. Professor Fantasige crying. No, it can't be. My entire career! My life! Everything is nothing, Dr. Genial, Professor Nihil, and Dr. Materia. Look at each other! They now understand the depth of his defeat. Their own awakenings are quiet, internal. Dr. Materia, quietly. Nothing is lost. Professor, now you can start over. Dr. Genial nods. With real knowledge. Professor Nihil, with a small smile and meaning. Mr. Optimist, who previously followed fantasy in everything, now approaches Dr. Vidantin. Mr. Optimist. Dr. Vidantin, I told myself that the future is bright, but now I see that it is bright only if we understand the truth. Can you teach me? Dr. Vidantin, with a smile. Of course. The door of knowledge is always open, realizing our true nature, which transcends the imperfect senses and material covering, is the only path to lasting happiness and peace. It is a process that requires sincerity and dedication, but the reward is priceless. Dr. Absurdus somehow dragged himself to the edge of the stage and sat there, confused, but now no longer in denial, but in a kind of acceptance. His internal battle with the absurdity of life seemed to have taken on new meaning. Narrator. And so, dear viewers, this part of the symposium has come to an end. Some have found the truth. Others have remained trapped in the web of their own illusions. But even those who clung to lies have realized that empty promises cannot triumph over the power of truth in the long run. For the truth is always clear, and despite the envy and stubbornness of the mind, every illusion will eventually dissipate. The curtains slowly close. The crowd is now gathered around Dr. Vidantin and his new students, Dr. Genial, Professor Nihil, Dr. Matter, and Mr. Optimist. Quiet conversations and questions full of hope can be heard. Absurdus and Fantasige have been left on the floor, but they are no longer alone, for they are the object of understanding and compassion, not ridicule. End of drama.